There is a marriage crisis, a relationship crisis, a loneliness crisis going on within America right now, especially impacting young men. And today, we're going to go over the data, not just the vibes. We're going to go over the data which is causing it. Plus, we're going to offer something that very, very few other people offer on this topic, and that is actual, genuine, no kidding hope. That's right, hope, because it turns out that there is still a very successful pathway in America today for young men to find the sort of woman that you would want to get married to and have kids with, who won't, kill your kids in the womb or trans the kids that get out. All right. We're going to give you the cheat codes for how to make that actually happen. With you today to discuss this is someone, myself, who has been successfully married for 27 years to the same woman. That's 27 years all in a row, ladies and gentlemen. I've raised 3 children. One of my oldest daughter is already married and out of the house. My son he's in the dating market. And then my youngest daughter is dating, but let's just say that thing's probably wrapped up at this point. So the question is, what do I have to offer to this? But then we also have our resident historian, our political prognosticator. He's on the market, ladies. Christian Hines, you are in the market right now. And we have had a lot of robust discussions over this specific topic, sometimes agreeing, sometimes disagreeing. So I'm actually excited to get your take on the data and what the data suggests. You ready to jump into this, Christian?
I am, but Nick, I'm not on the market. I'm taking someone out on a date at the end of this month.
Well,
You could have brought that up.
You're dating.
Yeah, so
you're
I'm not in the market.
I'm not in
the market.
What
I'm
I mean by that is you're not married yet. But that's actually, Christian, the way you just described that is very, very important. The way you just described that is very important, because you just said you're not on the market, and yet you're not married, and yet you're going on a date. So what do you mean by that? We're going to get into that in just a little bit. But spoiler alert, I think Christian actually has the right mindset, and the data seems to prove it. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to talk about what is going on with young men, because there's definitely a crisis here. There was Christian, I think you were the one, it was either you or Hamilton that actually pointed this out to me, but it was a YouTube channel called Shoe on Head. And she was always kind of like more of a liberal commentator. And she did this one episode just talking about man, what's going on with the guys? Male loneliness seems to be a real problem. Guys seem to be a lot more depressed lately. And the numbers kind of back it up. In fact, I want to show this screen right here. This was put out by American Enterprise Institute. And this is just depressing when you look at it. And it's for every 100 girls whose entry into kindergarten is delayed, 139 for boys. Who's classified as having mental retardation, for 100 girls, 140 boys. And K-12 classified as having a specific learning disability, it's 144 to 100. Who repeat kindergarten, 145. Ages 3 to 17 years diagnosed with communication disorders, for every 100 girls, 168 boys. Who abuse illicit drugs and alcohol, for every 100 girls, 180 boys. And then just suspended from school, 195 to 100. Expelled, 223 to 100. 25 to 34 years old who died, 227 boys to every 100 girls. Who died by opioid overdose, 227. You go all the way down. Who have been wounded in action in Afghanistan and Iraq, 5,026 to every 100. Who die on the job, 1,118 men for every 100 women. You just go through ages 25 to 29 who commit suicide, 418 men to every 100 girls. So the bottom line is there's a lot of things going on right now with men that would cause them to not exactly be excited about their future. And the moment anybody tries to talk about it, or talk about how this could potentially impact the dating market, or how this could potentially impact marriage or having children, what Shoe on Head realized was that her female audience turned against her. They started treating her horribly. I hope men are suffering. It's not bad enough. And you're talking to these, and again, if you were talking to somebody that maybe they had been captured and held captive by a brutal man for years, like some women have, you would understand this open hostility toward men. But we're just talking about your average woman with a gender studies degree that has this overall just hatred toward men, this undying belief that they are living in an oppressive patriarchal society. And then you actually look at the numbers of how men are doing within this society, and you see that, God, it's not going that great. And you and I had this discussion once where you said, Nick, it's not as simple as just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. when you have a society and a culture that is constantly telling men they suck and that all of their masculine instincts are bad and that the future is female. And just like this chart shows, like kind of the bad things that are going on, if we scroll up here a little bit, we get into the good things, right? For every 100 girls who earn an associate's degree, there's only 61 men. For everyone 25 to 29 who earn a master's degree, 100 girls to every 61 men. Enrolled in U.S. graduate schools, for every 100 girls, 68 men. And you go down the list, and it's kind of the same thing. Who earn a doctorate? It's now 100 women, 100 girls for every 85 men. And it turns out that a lot of this actually starts in elementary school. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about our friends over at Alliance Defending Freedom. 300,000 plus kids in U.S. foster care, and most states are desperate for more families. Christians are stepping up, but states are actually blocking their ability to adopt kids in need over pride parades and gender transitions. That's right. ADF is fighting and winning, but more cases are coming. Alliance Defending Freedom depends on your support to win these cases and protect Christian families who want to adopt these children out of foster care. This is real kids and real families being shut out of the process for their faith. If you want to help, go to joinadf.com/Nick to give in support of Christian foster parents today. Or you can text Nick, that's Nick, text Nick to 83848. Joinadf.com/Nick or text Nick to 83848 and go help Alliance Defending Freedom. Like, this is one of the biggest things that kind of surprised me about all this data is that when you look at what's going on within our public school system, at some point you almost have to come to the conclusion, right, that if we acknowledge that boys and girls are different, which is something the left doesn't, then we also have to ask the question, like, okay, if boys are falling behind, not in college, they're not falling behind, where they're really starting to fall behind is as early as kindergarten within our public school system, where it seems like a large percentage of them, at twice the rate of girls, are being medicated just to keep them quiet and in their chairs. So, Christian, again, you being significantly, younger than me, and you starting to see the rise of kind of wokeness and the rise of this problem with respect to male loneliness and things like that. Did you start to see it as young as just public school?
Yeah, certainly. I remember I have this story. I was in either kindergarten or first grade, so this was a long time ago, right? We're talking, what, 20 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as a you know how old are you, like, in kindergarten or first grade? Like
Like
5,
five,
6?
yeah, 5.
Yeah, so I remember at like 5 years old drawing stick figures, and it was a super common thing, like in my, again, like first grade class, where me and my friends would draw, like war scenes,
Yeah,
and we would like recreate like the storming of Normandy or
yeah,
something like that. And the teachers would get so upset at us. They were constantly thinking that this was like some sort of like dangerous, like path to being like a school shooter or something like that. Oh, you
yeah.
can't draw explosions and jet fighters shooting at each other, and little stick figures with machine guns like storming fortifications. Like, that was a super common thing we would do. We would like map out like the scene almost like a movie, and we'd be like, all right, here's my little army of stick figures, here's your army, and we'd like draw each reoccurring scene, and they'd be shooting at each other. And it was almost like a board game, but played
Yeah,
out
you were
over sheets of paper.
supposed to draw ponies and flowers and
Yeah,
fields.
no, you were not allowed to draw firearms, even if they were
Yeah.
L-shaped
It's
sticks
okay.
with little dots pointing at each other. Like, you were not allowed to do that. And like action figures. So, like, again, like in kindergarten, they did this super stupid thing where they would take like army men, but they mutilated the army men and they removed the firearms from
What?
the army men.
You're
And
when
so,
you were
like,
when you were in elementary school, they did this?
mhm. Yeah, they had, they had toys and stuff like that when you were in like, this was kindergarten.
Yeah.
They had like toys, and they had like little army men, but they were mutilated. They removed, the AK-47s and the M14s and stuff like that from the army men. And so I was upset. Like, I remember asking him, like, well, why are all these army men damaged? Like, I'll just bring my own. And I was told, no, under no circumstances can you bring army men with firearms,
Okay.
because that's against the school policy. And so,
So
like, going all the way back to, over 20 years ago,
yeah.
right? To over 25 years ago. This has been a thing. This was like turn of the millennium, right?
Yeah.
I was in first grade in like 2001. And so I was in kindergarten in like, I guess 2000 or 99. And yeah, because I graduated high school in whatever the year was the grade that I was in, right? So I graduated high school in 2012. So, I was in first grade in 2001. I must have been in kindergarten in 2000. So this has been since the beginning of this century, basically.
Yeah.
That this mindset of like, no, you're not allowed to, express any sort of dangerous tendencies or be interested in anything.
Here's what's interesting. So I also got in trouble in kindergarten. And my dad and mom were split up, and my dad was an LAPD police officer in Los Angeles. And he actually got called he had to drive all the way up to Northern California for a parent teacher conference with my kindergarten teacher, who was a sweetheart. Like I will always defend Mrs. O'Loughlin. She was wonderful. But she brings my dad in and she goes, Mr. Freitas, we have a problem. I was like, oh, okay, what's the problem? He goes, well, every recess, Nicholas plays cops and robbers. And he's always the cop, but he's not what you or I would call a good cop. And so my dad goes, okay, what's the problem? It's like, well, Nicholas will chase the robbers all around the playground. And then when he catches them, he throws them to the ground. And then he points his finger gun at them and he tells them to freeze dirtbag. And then, and at this point, my dad instantly knew he was the problem, because he had shown me Police Academy when I was staying with him. And there's this scene where like this one officer throws the gun and she goes, freeze dirtbag. And so that was like, oh yeah, that's what. And so my dad is like, I'll talk to him. And I think he got me ice cream. He was like, good job, son. But no, there was this. I remember, again, I went to a public school for elementary school, and then I went to like this really small Christian school for middle school and high school. And there was rules against firearms and stuff like that. But I do remember one time I brought in a percussion cap musket in high school to school, and they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." As I fired off black powder as a demonstration. But again, it was a small Christian school, right? It was the Christian school that the parents got together and started because they couldn't afford the other ones. But there wasn't this intense fear of weapons or men being masculine or things like that. It was quite the opposite. I mean, we still had stupid rules with like zero tolerance policies for fighting and things like that. Didn't stop me, but it was what it was. But like to your point, you started to see maybe the beginning of some of this stuff, but nothing like what you were experiencing. And the interesting part is this actually follows into college. So the reason why we're talking about what happens to boys in elementary school is because I've become increasingly convinced that public schools are far more suited to what we would call the average female disposition toward learning than the average male disposition toward learning. And boys tend to be more rambunctious. They don't develop mentally as fast as girls do. Girls are generally far more interested in being able to sit down and quietly read or play or listen or whatever it is. Boys are bouncing off the walls. And so you put them in this environment where they have very, very little recess time and a whole lot of, sit down, don't talk to people, read your book, fill out your stuff. And there's teachers that recognize this is problematic, but they're not the ones that write the policy. And so right off the bat, you have a public school system, which is constantly telling boys to sit down, be quiet, and for obvious reasons, don't be violent. But now it's the ridiculous idea of if we don't want them to be violent, then we have to make sure that their play is restricted and they can't do anything hyper competitive or physical, or they can't even bring little GI Joes to school because that's violence. And so from the very beginning, they're telling boys there's something wrong with you at the same time that the girls are flourishing. So there's something right with the girls and something wrong with the boys, not to mention the fact that the overwhelming majority of your elementary school teachers, of your public school teachers are what? Women. So I don't think we should be shocked if we start to ask the question like, yeah, maybe the reason why so many boys are getting drugged or diagnosed with ADHD is because you have them in an environment which is not at all conducive to their nature or the way that they learn. Now, I am not giving a pass to little boys that are just little hellions that need to be disciplined. Discipline is a necessary component. But there's a difference between proper discipline, which you're not allowed to do in the classroom, versus just drugging kids so they'll be quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you missed it, we made a big announcement that we have joined the Blaze team, and there are big things happening at Blaze. We would love for you to join us. You can join now at blazetv.com and use promo code Nick40 to get $40 off. Go check it out.